The radio crackled to life at 2:47 p.m., cutting through the steady hum of traffic on Peachtree Street. Sarah Collins adjusted the volume on her shoulder-mounted unit, her green eyes narrowing as she listened to the dispatcher's monotone voice. Unit K-9, we have a report of suspicious activity at 1847 Industrial Boulevard, Warehouse Complex, Section D, possible trespassing, requesting welfare check. Sarah glanced down at Max, who sat alert in the passenger seat of the marked SUV, his dark eyes watching her intently. The Belgian Malinois' ears were perked forward, and she could see the subtle tension in his muscular frame. He always knew when they were about to work. "Copy that dispatch. K-9 responding. ETA 12 minutes, Sarah replied, already signaling to merge into the left lane. She'd been a K-9 officer with the Atlanta Police Department for 6 years now, and Max had been with her for every single one of them. They'd started together as rookies, her fresh out of the Academy's K-9 program, him barely 2 years old and full of raw talent that needed refinement. Now, they moved as one unit, anticipating each other's actions with an almost supernatural synchronicity. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the city as Sarah navigated through Atlanta's dense traffic. She knew Industrial Boulevard well. It was part of the old manufacturing district that had fallen into disrepair over the past decade. Most of the warehouses stood empty, their broken windows like hollow eyes staring out at a city that had moved on without them. It was a perfect location for squatters, drug operations, or worse. "Just a welfare check," Sarah murmured to Max, who responded with a soft whine of acknowledgement. Probably nothing. But her instincts, honed through hundreds of calls just like this one, told her otherwise. There was something in the dispatcher's tone, a slight hesitation that spoke of more information than had been shared over the radio. Sarah had learned to trust those subtle cues. The industrial district appeared ahead, a sprawl of concrete and corrugated metal that stretched for blocks. Sarah slowed the SUV as she turned onto Industrial Boulevard, her eyes scanning the numbered sections painted on the weathered buildings. Section A was a massive automotive parts warehouse, still operational. Section B housed what looked like a textile operation, though the parking lot was nearly empty. Section C appeared completely abandoned. Section D sat at the far end of the complex, separated from the other buildings by an overgrown lot filled with rusted equipment and discarded shipping containers. The warehouse itself was a 2-story structure with a flat roof, its red brick facade darkened by decades of pollution and neglect. Several of the loading dock doors hung partially open, their mechanisms clearly broken. Sarah pulled into the cracked asphalt lot and put the SUV in park, taking a moment to survey the scene. The building looked deserted, but something felt off. She couldn't quite identify what it was. Maybe the way one of the side doors appeared to have fresh scratches around its lock, or the tire tracks in the dust that looked recent. Or perhaps it was simply the oppressive silence that hung over the entire area. "Dispatch, K-9 on scene at 1847 Industrial Boulevard, Section D," she reported, unclipping her seatbelt. "Beginning exterior sweep. Copy K-9. Backup unit en route. ETA 20 minutes. 20 minutes. Standard protocol for a welfare check in a low-priority district." Sarah nodded to herself and opened her door, the humid Atlanta air immediately wrapping around her like a wet blanket. Max was already moving, hopping down from his seat with practiced ease, his tactical harness bearing the APD insignia catching the sunlight. Sarah attached Max's lead more for show than necessity, and together they approached the warehouse. Her right hand rested casually near her service weapon, a habit she'd developed early in her career. Max's nose was already working, processing thousands of scent molecules that Sarah's human senses couldn't begin to detect. They circled the building clockwise, Sarah's eyes cataloguing every detail. The windows on the ground floor were either boarded up or broken, revealing nothing but darkness within. Graffiti covered much of the lower walls. Gang tags mostly, some dating back years based on their faded appearance. But there were also fresher markings, crude symbols that Sarah didn't recognize. Max suddenly stopped at the northeast corner of the building, his body going rigid. His nose pointed toward a service entrance, and Sarah felt her pulse quicken. This was Max's alert posture, controlled, focused, completely different from his casual curiosity. He'd found something. "What is it, boy?" Sarah asked quietly, trusting Max's judgment completely. The dog took 2 steps forward, then sat, his eyes fixed on the door. It was a textbook indication, the result of thousands of hours of training. Whatever scent Max had detected, it was significant. Sarah approached the door carefully. It was metal, painted an industrial grey that had mostly flaked away. The handle showed signs of recent use. The rust around it had been scraped away, revealing bare metal underneath. She tested it gently and found it unlocked. The door swung inward with a harsh squeal that echoed through the empty lot. Darkness yawned beyond the threshold, and with it came a smell that made Sarah's nose wrinkle. Chemical, sharp, overlaid with something organic and unpleasant. Max whined again, more insistently this time, and Sarah knew they needed to proceed with caution. "Dispatch K-9-7. I have an unsecured entry point with indicators of recent activity. Max has alerted. Requesting that backup expedite. Copy K-9-7. Backup advised. ETA now 15 minutes. Do you want to hold position?" Sarah looked down at Max, who was staring into the darkness with intense focus. Every instinct told her to wait for backup, to follow protocol, to play it safe. But she also knew that 15 minutes could be an eternity if someone was in danger inside, or if evidence was being destroyed. And she had Max, the best partner she could ask for. "Negative. Dispatch. We're going in for a preliminary sweep. We'll maintain radio contact." She unclipped Max's lead, freeing him to work naturally, and drew her flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing a narrow corridor that stretched deeper into the building. The walls were bare concrete, stained with water damage and mold. The floor was littered with debris, broken pallets, scattered papers, and what looked like remnants of old machinery. "Max, seek," Sarah commanded softly. The Belgian Malinois moved forward with purpose, his nose sweeping left and right as he processed the environment. Sarah followed closely, her flashlight and her awareness working in tandem to process the space. The chemical smell was stronger now, mixing with dust and decay. They passed through the corridor into what had once been the main warehouse floor. Sarah's flashlight beam revealed a cavernous space, easily 100 feet across and 50 feet high. Support columns rose like giant trees, their shadows dancing in the flashlight's glow. Old conveyor systems hung from the ceiling, frozen in mid-operation decades ago. Along the walls, empty shelving units stood like skeletal remains. Max was moving with increased urgency now, his tail straight out behind him, his entire body language screaming that he'd found something important. He led Sarah across the warehouse floor, weaving between obstacles with the confidence of a dog who knew exactly where he was going. They reached the far corner of the warehouse, where a metal staircase descended into what appeared to be a basement level. Sarah had seen the building's exterior and hadn't noticed any indication of a lower floor. It must be partially underground. The stairs disappeared into complete darkness, and the chemical smell was significantly stronger here. Max didn't hesitate. He started down the stairs, and Sarah followed, her heartbeat accelerating with each step. This felt wrong. Everything about this situation felt wrong. But Max was committed, and Sarah trusted him more than she trusted her own instincts. "Dispatch K-9-7. We've located a basement level proceeding with—" Max suddenly bolted, his claws scraping against metal as he raced down the remaining stairs and disappeared into the darkness below. Sarah heard him barking, sharp, urgent sounds that meant he'd found something significant. "Max! Heel!" Sarah shouted, rushing down the stairs after him. Her flashlight beam bounced wildly as she descended, catching glimpses of concrete walls and more corridors. She could hear Max ahead, his barking echoing through the underground space, but she couldn't see him. The layout down here was different, multiple passages branching off in different directions. "Max!" Sarah called again, her voice tight with concern. The barking stopped abruptly, and Sarah's blood ran cold. In 6 years of working together, Max had never gone silent like that during an active search. She sprinted forward, her flashlight beam swinging wildly, her breath coming in sharp gasps. She rounded a corner and found herself in a narrow hallway with 3 doors, all closed. The chemical smell was overwhelming now, making her eyes water. Which door had Max gone through? Sarah tried the first door, locked. The second door, also locked, but the third door swung open when she touched it, revealing another staircase, this one descending even deeper. Fresh scratches on the floor showed where something or someone had recently passed through. "Max!" Sarah shouted down the stairs, her voice cracking. She heard a whimper, faint and distant, coming from below. Without hesitation, Sarah raced down the stairs, taking them 2 at a time. Her training screaming at her to slow down, to wait for backup, to maintain situational awareness. But Max was down there, possibly hurt, and nothing else mattered. The stairs ended in a small room, maybe 10 feet square. Sarah's flashlight revealed concrete walls, a low ceiling, and in the center of the floor, Max lay on his side, one of his back legs caught in what appeared to be a mechanical trap of some kind. Blood matted his fur around the injury, and his dark eyes found Sarah's with an expression that broke her heart, pain mixed with trust, as if he knew she would fix this. "Oh God, Max," Sarah breathed, dropping to her knees beside him. That's when she saw the rest of the room. Her flashlight beam revealed metal boxes attached to the walls at regular intervals, each one connected by wires to a central unit in the corner. Red LED lights blinked in sequence, and Sarah felt her stomach drop as recognition hit her. Explosives. The room was rigged to blow, and mounted in the corner, a small camera with its own LED light stared at her like a malevolent eye. Someone was watching. Sarah's radio crackled. "K-9-7, backup is 5 minutes out. What's your status?" Her hand trembled as she reached for the radio, her eyes never leaving Max's face. The dog whimpered again, trying to move toward her despite the trap holding his leg. "Dispatch," Sarah said, her voice surprisingly steady despite the terror coursing through her veins. "I need bomb squad immediately. Officer and K-9 trapped in basement level with active explosive devices. I repeat, active explosive devices. Tell backup to hold position and evacuate the area." A pause on the other end. Then the dispatcher's voice came back, stripped of its usual monotone, now sharp with urgency. "Copy that, K-9-7, bomb squad dispatched, ETA 30 minutes. Can you evacuate?" Sarah looked at the trap holding Max's leg, at the blood pooling beneath him, at the explosive devices surrounding them, at the camera watching their every move. She reached out slowly and placed her hand on Max's head, feeling him relax slightly at her touch. "Negative dispatch," Sarah replied quietly. "We're not going anywhere." The LED lights continued their hypnotic blinking, counting down to something. She didn't know what. All she knew was that the simple welfare check had become a nightmare, and somewhere in the darkness above them, someone was watching, waiting, perhaps even hoping for the moment when everything would explode. Sarah's fingers found the soft fur behind Max's ears, the spot that always calmed him, and she began counting seconds in her head, praying that 30 minutes would be enough time, knowing that in situations like this, time was the most precious and most unreliable resource they had. The camera's red light continued to blink. Max whimpered again, and Sarah Collins made a silent promise to her partner that somehow, some way, they were both getting out of this alive. The 30 minutes stretched before Sarah like an endless desert. She remained kneeling beside Max, her hand never leaving his head, feeling each ragged breath he took. The trap had closed around his left hind leg with cruel precision, metal teeth designed not to sever, but to hold. Blood seeped steadily from the wounds, forming a small pool on the concrete floor that reflected the blinking red LEDs like a macabre mirror. "Stay still, boy. Just stay still," Sarah whispered, her voice the only sound in the oppressive silence, besides Max's labored breathing and the quiet electronic hum of the explosive devices. She'd already assessed their situation a dozen times. each evaluation reaching the same grim conclusion. The room was approximately 10 by 12 feet, with a single entrance, the stairway she'd come down. 4 explosive devices were mounted on the walls, one on each side, their wiring running to a central control unit in the northeast corner. The camera remained fixed on them, its red recording light a constant reminder that they were being watched. Sarah's radio crackled, making her jump. K-9-7, this is Sergeant Morrison. What's your exact situation? She recognized Morrison's voice. He was the supervisor for the Tactical Response Unit, a 20-year veteran with a reputation for staying calm under pressure. His presence meant the situation had been elevated to a major incident. Sergeant, I'm in a basement room, approximately 2 levels below ground. My K-9 is trapped in a mechanical device, injured but stable. The room contains 4 visible explosive devices, appears to be remotely monitored via camera. I count at least 8 wires running from the devices to a central control box. Copy that. Bomb squad is en route. Lieutenant Hayes is commanding. ETA now 22 minutes. Can you describe the explosive devices? Sarah directed her flashlight at the nearest device, careful not to make any sudden movements. They appeared to be homemade, possibly pipe bombs, metal casings, maybe 6 inches in length. The control box has an LED display, currently showing multiple red lights in sequence. No countdown visible. A pause. Then Morrison's voice came back, tighter now. K-9-7, Hayes wants to know, are the devices motion activated? Sarah's blood ran cold. She'd been so focused on Max that she hadn't considered that possibility. She forced herself to breathe slowly, to think. Unknown, Sergeant. I've been stationary since discovering them, but I had to move to reach my K-9 initially. If they're motion activated, they would have triggered already. No, unless there's a delay, Morrison replied, or unless they're set to specific parameters. Hayes says do not move unless absolutely necessary. The camera suggests remote monitoring, which means someone could be waiting to manually detonate. Sarah looked up at the camera, her jaw tightening. Someone was out there watching them suffer, waiting for, what? The right moment? Maximum psychological impact? Or were they simply documenting their handiwork? Understood, Sergeant. We're not going anywhere. Max whimpered, and Sarah felt his muscles tense beneath her hand. He was trying to move, the pain and stress overwhelming his training. She leaned closer, putting her face near his, letting him smell her, using every technique she'd learned to keep him calm. Easy, Max. Easy, partner. I've got you. Just breathe. The dog's dark eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment, Sarah saw past the pain to the absolute trust that had been built over 6 years of partnership. Max believed she would save him. He had no doubt. That faith was both humbling and terrifying. Her radio crackled again. K-9-7, this is Lieutenant Hayes, Bomb Squad. I'm patching in from the Mobile Command Unit. Can you hear me? Affirmative, Lieutenant. Good. I need you to talk me through everything you see, starting with the control box. Use your flashlight, but move it slowly. Sudden changes in light or shadow could potentially trigger photoelectric sensors. Sarah swallowed hard and began moving her flashlight with glacial slowness toward the control box in the corner. The box is approximately 12 inches square, appears to be metal, possibly a modified electrical panel. There are 6 red LED lights arranged in 2 rows of 3. They're blinking in sequence, left to right, top row, then left to right, bottom row. Cycle repeats every 5 seconds. What's below the lights? Sarah leaned slightly, trying to get a better angle without moving her lower body. There's a small LCD screen currently blank. Below that, what looks like an antenna, maybe 4 inches tall, thin wire. And there's something else, looks like a cell phone mounted inside the box. A cell phone? Hayes's voice sharpened. That's the trigger mechanism. This is a remote detonation setup. Someone can call that number and boom, everything goes. The casual way Hayes said boom made Sarah's skin crawl, but she appreciated his directness. No sugarcoating, no false reassurances, just facts. How much explosive are we talking about, Lieutenant? A pause. Based on your description of 4 devices, if they're standard pipe bombs with proper packing, enough to collapse that room, and probably a significant portion of the building above you, you'd be at the epicenter. Sarah closed her eyes briefly, then opened them and looked at Max. The dog was watching her, still trusting, still waiting for her to fix this. She wouldn't let him down. "What's the play, Lieutenant?" "The play is that you sit tight and don't even breathe heavy until I get there. My team is loading up now. We'll have the robot go in first, assess the wiring, see if we can disrupt the cell signal or cut the power safely. But Sarah," Hayes' voice dropped, becoming more personal, "I need you to understand something. Whoever set this up knew what they were doing. This isn't some amateur hour setup. The camera, the trap, the sophisticated trigger mechanism, this was planned, which means there might be redundancies, fail-safes, maybe even anti-tampering devices we can't see yet. Are you saying you might not be able to disarm it?" Another pause, longer this time. "I'm saying we'll do everything we can, but you should know all your options." Sarah understood what he wasn't saying. If the situation became too unstable, if the risk of detonation became imminent, they might have to make a call about acceptable losses. 1 officer and 1 dog versus potential casualties if the bomb went off during a rescue attempt. It was cold calculus, but it was reality. "Understood, Lieutenant. We'll be here." She ended the transmission and looked back at Max. His breathing had become more labored, and the blood pool had grown larger. The trap was doing more than just holding him. It was slowly causing more damage with each small movement he made. If they didn't get him out soon, even if the bombs didn't kill him, blood loss and shock might. "Max, look at me," Sarah commanded softly. The dog's eyes found hers. "Down. Stay." Max's body relaxed slightly, obeying the command even through his pain. His training was so deeply ingrained that it overrode everything else. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes but blinked them away. Emotion wouldn't help either of them right now. A sound echoed from somewhere above them, voices, multiple people, the organized chaos of a major response mobilizing. Sarah could imagine the scene. Tactical units securing the perimeter, bomb squad assembling their equipment, probably a negotiator on standby in case whoever was watching tried to make contact. The warehouse that had been silent and abandoned 20 minutes ago was now the center of a crisis. Her radio came alive with rapid-fire communications. She heard Morrison coordinating the perimeter, Hayes directing his team's equipment staging, and a voice she didn't recognize, probably the incident commander, requesting updates from multiple units. The operation was growing, becoming more complex by the minute. "All units, this is command. We have a developing situation. Plainclothes detectives have identified vehicle tracks, leaving the scene that match a vehicle of interest in a recent arms trafficking investigation. This may not be a random setup. Repeat, this may be connected to an ongoing investigation. Intelligence unit is reviewing surveillance footage from the area." Sarah's mind raced. Arms trafficking. That explained the sophisticated setup, the professional quality of the trap and explosives. This wasn't some random psychopath's game. This was organized crime, possibly cartel-connected, given Atlanta's position as a major distribution hub, which meant the people watching through that camera had resources, expertise, and absolutely no hesitation about killing police officers. A new voice came through her radio, calm and measured. "K-9-7, this is Detective Chen, Intelligence Unit. I'm working the arms trafficking case. We believe this warehouse was being used as a storage and distribution point. The trap you triggered was likely meant to protect product and eliminate threats. We're trying to identify who's monitoring the camera feed now." "Detective, any idea how to make contact with them?" Sarah asked, knowing it was a long shot. "Working on it. We've got cyber trying to trace the camera's signal, but it's likely routing through multiple proxies. These guys are careful." Max whimpered again, and Sarah felt him shudder. She gently ran her hand down his side, checking for other injuries she might have missed in the dim light. Her fingers came away sticky with blood, not just from his trapped leg, but from several cuts along his flank. He must have crashed into something when the trap triggered. "I need medical for my K-9, Sarah said into her radio, knowing how it sounded, prioritizing a dog while they were both sitting on top of enough explosives to level the building. But Max wasn't just a dog. He was her partner, her responsibility, and by God, she was going to fight for him. "Copy that, K-9-7, Morrison replied. "We have veterinary trauma standing by. Dr. Reeves from the K-9 unit is on scene." That small piece of good news lifted Sarah's spirits slightly. Marcus Reeves was one of the best veterinary surgeons in the state, specializing in working dogs. If anyone could save Max once they got him out, it was Reeves. "Sergeant, how long has it been?" Sarah asked, knowing she shouldn't focus on the clock, but unable to help herself. 17 minutes since bomb squad dispatch. They're making good time, should be on scene in 5. 5 more minutes. Sarah looked around the room again, this time trying to see it from a tactical perspective. The walls were solid concrete, the ceiling low but reinforced. Even if she could somehow get Max out of the trap, carrying him up 2 flights of stairs while moving slowly enough not to trigger potential motion sensors would be nearly impossible. And that was assuming the explosives didn't go off during the attempt. No, Hayes was right. Their only real option was to sit tight and let the professionals do their work. A scraping sound from above made Sarah's head snap up. Someone was moving on the floor above them, heavy footsteps, purposeful. Her hand instinctively moved to her service weapon. "Command, I hear movement directly above my position," Sarah reported quietly. The radio erupted with activity. "All units, possible suspect in building, tactical, move in. K-9-7, stay down and quiet." The footsteps continued, pacing back and forth. Sarah could hear muffled voices now, at least 2 people, though she couldn't make out words. Then a sound that made her heart stop, a door slamming, followed by an engine starting somewhere close by. "Vehicle departing north side of building," someone shouted over the radio. "Grey van, no plates visible, units in pursuit." The footsteps above had stopped. The sudden silence was somehow more terrifying than the noise had been. Sarah stared at the camera, wondering if whoever had been watching was now fleeing, or if they'd simply handed off monitoring duties to someone else. Her radio crackled with Lieutenant Hayes' voice. "K-9-7, bomb squad is entering the building now. We're going to move slow and methodical. Do not respond to any sounds you hear unless you're directly addressed on radio. We need to minimize any signals in the area that might accidentally trigger the device." "Understood," Sarah replied, then returned to stroking Max's head. The next few minutes were agonizing. Sarah could hear the bomb squad's progress, the whir of the robot's motors, the occasional terse communication between Hayes and his team, the careful clearing of each level. They were being professional, thorough, taking no chances. But every second that ticked by was another second. Max was bleeding, another second closer to potential detonation. Finally, she heard footsteps on the stairs above her current level. Careful, measured footsteps, accompanied by the mechanical sound of the robot. A light appeared in the stairwell, brighter than her flashlight, and then Lieutenant Hayes' voice echoed down. "Officer Collins, I'm at the top of your stairs. I'm going to send the robot down first. Do not move, do not speak, just stay exactly as you are." The robot appeared moments later, a sophisticated piece of equipment bristling with cameras and sensors. It descended the stairs with surprising grace, then rolled into the room, its multiple cameras swiveling to take in every angle. Sarah watched as it approached the control box, a mechanical arm extending to examine the wiring. Hayes' voice came through her radio, quiet and focused. "Okay, I'm seeing what you described. 4 devices, central control, cell phone trigger. There's also—" "Damn." "What?" Sarah couldn't help asking. "There's a pressure plate under your K-9. The trap didn't just catch his leg, it triggered a secondary system. If we release the trap without disarming the pressure plate first, it detonates." Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. "Can you disarm it?" "That's what we're going to find out. Give me a few minutes." Those few minutes felt like hours. Sarah watched the robot work, its precise mechanical movements guided by Hayes' expert hands. The device extended various tools, probing wires, analyzing connections, building a complete picture of the threat they were facing. "Command, this is Hayes. I need a decision point. This system is more complex than initially assessed. We have multiple trigger mechanisms, including remote detonation, pressure sensors, and what appears to be a timer that's currently inactive. I can disarm it, but it's going to take time, maybe an hour, maybe more. And there's risk. If whoever set this up has any kind of dead man's switch, or if they decide to trigger remotely during our work, we won't have time to react." The incident commander's voice came back. "What are you recommending, Lieutenant?" "I'm recommending we proceed with disarmament, but Officer Collins needs to understand the risk. If something goes wrong, she's at ground zero." All eyes, or at least all radio attention, turned to Sarah. She looked at Max, who was watching the robot with confused curiosity despite his pain, still trusting that everything would be okay, because Sarah was there. She keyed her radio. "Lieutenant Hayes, I'm not leaving my partner. Do what you need to do." A pause. Then Hayes's voice came back and Sarah could hear the respect in it. "Copy that, Officer Collins. All right, let's get to work. Everyone else clear the building except for my team and medical standing by at the perimeter. This is going to take a while, and I need absolute quiet to concentrate." The robot withdrew slightly, and Sarah heard Hayes descending the stairs, accompanied by another person, probably his second in command. They appeared in the doorway wearing full bomb suits, moving with the careful deliberation of people who knew they were walking into a situation where one wrong move meant death. "Officer Collins," Hayes said, his voice muffled by his helmet. "We're going to work on the control box first. Try to isolate the trigger mechanisms. While we do that, I need you to keep your K-9 absolutely still. Any shift in weight on that pressure plate could be catastrophic." "He's trained to hold position," Sarah replied. "He'll stay." Hayes nodded and moved to the control box, while his partner began examining the pressure plate beneath Max with specialized equipment. Sarah watched them work, these anonymous heroes in their bulky suits, willingly putting themselves in danger to save a cop and her dog. It was humbling and terrifying in equal measure. The work was painstakingly slow. Hayes used specialized cutters to expose wiring, a multimeter to test electrical connections, and a portable X-ray device to see inside the devices without opening them. Every movement was calculated, every decision carefully considered. His partner worked with equal precision on the pressure plate, mapping its mechanisms, looking for a safe way to release it. "Okay," Hayes said after what felt like an eternity. "I've isolated the cell phone trigger. Even if they try to call it now, it won't complete the circuit. That's the remote threat neutralized." "What about the pressure plate?" Sarah asked. The second technician looked up. "It's tricky. The plate is spring-loaded. When the trap caught your dog's leg, his weight compressed it. If we release the trap, the plate springs up and completes a circuit. But I think I can bypass it if I can get access to the mechanism underneath." "How do we do that?" Sarah asked, already dreading the answer. "We'd need to lift your K-9 slightly, just a fraction of an inch, hold him there. Then I can slide a thin blade underneath to cut the spring. But he'd need to be perfectly still." Sarah looked at Max, who was starting to show signs of serious distress. His breathing was shallow, his eyes glazing slightly from blood loss and shock. She didn't know if he had the strength to hold position through that kind of manipulation. "There has to be another way," Sarah said. Hayes straightened up from the control box. "There is. We could try to cut the trap itself, remove it from his leg without releasing the pressure plate. Then we could work on the plate without worrying about him moving. But cutting the trap means using powered tools, which means vibration, noise, and potential sparks. Any one of those could trigger a different sensor we haven't identified yet." Sarah felt trapped, an appropriate word given their situation. Every option carried enormous risk. Every decision could be the wrong one. She looked into Max's eyes, searching for an answer that wasn't there. Then Max did something that broke her heart and made her decision at the same time. Despite his pain, despite his fear, he shifted his head slightly and licked her hand, a gesture of comfort, of trust, of love. He was trying to reassure her. "Cut the trap," Sarah said firmly. "He's strong. We'll get through it." Hayes looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, we'll use a battery-powered cutter, lowest possible vibration. But Officer Collins, Sarah, you need to prepare yourself. If something goes wrong, there won't be time for goodbyes." "I understand." Hayes's partner retrieved a specialized tool from their equipment, a compact cutting device designed for situations exactly like this. Sarah positioned herself at Max's head, her hands on either side of his face, maintaining eye contact, pouring every ounce of her will into keeping him calm. "Max," she whispered, "stay. Just stay, boy. We're almost home." Hayes positioned the cutter against the trap's metal arm. On 3, 1, 2, 3. The cutter whined to life, and Sarah felt Max tense beneath her hands. The noise was awful, a high-pitched squeal of metal on metal that seemed to go on forever. Max's eyes went wide with fear, but Sarah held his gaze, refusing to look away, giving him an anchor in the storm. The trap's arm fell away with a clatter that made everyone freeze. For 5 seconds, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The LED lights on the control box continued their pattern. The devices remained silent. Nothing exploded. "Pressure plate is still stable," the second technician reported, "but we need to move fast. His leg is free, but he's lost a lot of blood." "Can we evacuate him now?" Sarah asked urgently. Hayes shook his head. "Not yet. We still need to disarm the pressure plate and the wall devices. If we move him now and his weight shift triggers something—" "How long?" Sarah demanded. 20 minutes, maybe 30. Sarah looked at Max and knew with absolute certainty that he didn't have 30 minutes. The dog's breathing was becoming labored, his eyes losing focus. He was going into shock, and without immediate medical intervention, he would die long before the bombs did. She made her decision in an instant. "Lieutenant, I'm picking him up, now." "Officer Collins, I strongly advise," noted and ignored. "I'm not watching my partner die on this floor when there's a trauma surgeon waiting outside. You focus on those bombs. I'll focus on getting us out." Before Hayes could argue further, Sarah slid her arms under Max's body, supporting his injured leg as carefully as possible. The dog whimpered but didn't resist. She stood slowly, testing the pressure plate's response. The LED lights continued their pattern. Nothing changed. "The plate's weight sensitive," the second technician said quickly. "If you can place something of approximately the same weight back on it immediately—" Sarah looked around desperately. Her equipment vest. It wasn't perfect, but it was close enough. She unbuckled it with one hand while holding Max with the other, a feat of desperation and determination. The vest hit the pressure plate just as her foot cleared it. The LEDs continued blinking. "Go!" Hayes shouted. "Move now while we have a window." Sarah didn't need to be told twice. She ran for the stairs, cradling Max against her chest, taking the steps as fast as she dared. Behind her, she could hear Hayes and his partner working frantically, knowing that every second Sarah had just bought them was precious. She burst through the door at the top of the stairs, then the next flight, then the corridor, then finally, blessed daylight. Hands reached for her, tactical officers and paramedics, but Sarah saw only one person, Dr. Marcus Reeves, his portable surgical kit already open, his team ready. "Here," Sarah gasped, laying Max on the gurney they'd wheeled to the building's entrance. "Leg trauma, blood loss, possible shock." "We've got him, Sarah," Reeves said calmly, his hands already working. "Let us do our job. You did your part." Sarah stumbled backward, suddenly aware that her arms were covered in Max's blood, that her hands were shaking, that her legs were threatening to give out. Someone caught her, Sergeant Morrison, and guided her toward an ambulance. "The bomb squad," Sarah started. "Still working," Morrison said, "but Hayes says the hard part's done. They'll have it cleared within the hour." A massive hand pressed her down onto the ambulance's rear step. "Sit, breathe. You just carried a 70-pound dog up 3 flights of stairs while sitting on enough explosives to level a city block. You're allowed to shake." Sarah sat, watching as Reeves worked on Max with the efficiency of a surgeon who'd done this 100 times before. AVs going in, pressure bandages applied, vitals being monitored. The organized chaos of saving a life. An explosion of noise made Sarah jump, but it was just the assembled officers erupting in applause as Lieutenant Hayes and his partner emerged from the building, both giving thumbs up. They'd done it. The bombs were disarmed. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face and didn't bother wiping them away. They'd survived. Against every odd, against every rational calculation, they'd survived. "Sarah," Reeves called out, "he's stable. We're transporting to Piedmont Veterinary Emergency. He'll need surgery, but I think he's going to make it." She nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. As the veterinary ambulance pulled away, Sarah caught a glimpse of Max's face through the window. His eyes closed now, finally allowing himself to rest now that the danger had passed. Morrison's radio crackled. "Command, this is Detective Chen. The van we pursued crashed attempting to evade. 2 suspects in custody. Both are known associates of the Vargas cartel. Looks like we stumbled onto a major distribution operation." Sarah barely heard the words. All she could think about was Max, fighting for his life in the back of that ambulance, and the promise she'd made to him in that basement room. They'd both gotten out alive. She'd kept her promise. But as she sat there, covered in her partner's blood, surrounded by the aftermath of what should have been a routine call, Sarah Collins understood with perfect clarity that nothing about this was over. Someone had set that trap, someone had been watching, and somewhere out there they were probably very angry that their prey had escaped. This wasn't the end, it was just the beginning. The surgical waiting room at Piedmont Veterinary Emergency had become Sarah's entire world. 4 hours had passed since Max had been wheeled into the operating room. 4 hours of staring at sterile white walls and trying not to imagine every possible worst-case scenario. She'd changed out of her blood-soaked uniform into borrowed APD sweats. But she could still feel the sticky residue on her skin, still smell the metallic scent that no amount of scrubbing had completely removed. Sergeant Morrison sat beside her, a silent presence that she appreciated more than she could express. He hadn't asked her any questions, hadn't pushed for details, hadn't done anything except be there. That was enough. The door opened and Dr. Marcus Reeves appeared, still in surgical scrubs. Sarah was on her feet instantly, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst through her chest. "He made it through surgery," Reeves said, and Sarah felt her knees weaken with relief. Morrison's hand on her shoulder kept her upright. "The trap caused significant damage to his left hind leg, torn muscles, damaged tendons, and a fractured tibia. We've repaired what we could, but he's going to need extensive rehabilitation." And Sarah... Reeves's expression grew more serious. "It's going to be at least 6 months before we know if he'll ever work again, maybe longer. 6 months. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. 6 months of Max not being her partner, not being in the field, not doing the work he was born to do. For a dog like Max, bred and trained for action, that kind of forced inactivity would be its own kind of torture. "Can I see him?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's in recovery now, still heavily sedated. But yes, you can sit with him. He'll need to stay here for at least a week while we monitor for infection and begin the healing process." Reeves led Sarah down a corridor to a private recovery room where Max lay on a padded table, his injured leg wrapped in layers of bandages and secured in a soft splint. An IV line ran into his front leg, delivering fluids and antibiotics. His eyes were closed, his breathing steady but shallow. He looked so small, so vulnerable, nothing like the powerful, confident dog who'd been her shadow for 6 years. Sarah pulled a chair close and took Max's paw gently in her hand. "I'm here, boy." "I'm right here." Behind her, Morrison cleared his throat. "Sarah, I hate to do this now, but I need a preliminary statement. The chief wants a full debrief as soon as you're ready." Sarah nodded without looking away from Max. "The warehouse was a setup from the start. Whoever called it in knew we'd respond. They were watching, waiting. This wasn't random, Sergeant. This was targeted. Detective Chen thinks so too. The suspects we picked up are talking, trying to cut deals. The warehouse was a major distribution point for the Vargas cartel. Weapons, explosives, probably drugs too. They'd been operating there for at least 8 months. When their surveillance picked up increased police activity in the area, they decided to send a message. A message, Sarah repeated flatly. They tried to kill a cop and a dog to send a message. They tried to kill you specifically, Morrison said quietly. Chen pulled the 911 call recording. The caller specifically asked for K-9 response. They wanted you there, Sarah, you and Max. The words took a moment to sink in, and when they did, Sarah felt cold fury wash over her. Why? Why target us specifically? That's what we're trying to figure out. But there's something else you need to know. The van we pursued, it crashed on Highway 285. Both suspects were injured, but they'll survive. One of them is Rafael Mendez, a high-level lieutenant in the Vargas organization. The other is Miguel Torres, his cousin and right-hand man. These aren't street-level dealers, Sarah. These are serious players. Sarah's mind raced, trying to connect the dots. She'd worked plenty of cases that involved the cartels, but nothing that would single her out for assassination. Unless 3 months ago, she said slowly, Max and I found that weapons cache in the Buckhead storage facility, the one with the military-grade explosives and assault rifles. That was Vargas territory, wasn't it? Morrison nodded grimly. That bust cost them about $2 million in product and led to the arrest of 6 of their people. We thought we'd shut down that particular pipeline, but it looks like we just made them angry. So this was revenge. Looks that way. And Sarah... Morrison's voice dropped even lower. Mendez and Torres aren't talking about the trap. They're lawyered up tight on that, but they're making noise about unfinished business. Chen thinks there might be more traps out there, more setups. The Vargas organization doesn't do anything small. If they committed these kinds of resources to taking you out, they're not going to stop just because this attempt failed. Sarah felt her hand tighten around Max's paw. Are you telling me I need protective custody? I'm telling you to be careful. We're going to have units watching your apartment, and I want you to vary your routes. Check your vehicle before you get in. All the standard precautions. But Sarah... Morrison's expression was troubled. The chief is also considering pulling you from active duty until this threat is neutralized. No. The word came out sharper than Sarah intended. I'm not hiding. If the Vargas cartel wants to try again, let them come. But I'm not giving up my badge because some criminals have a grudge. With Max out of commission, you can't work K-9 anyway. The chief is thinking of reassigning you to desk duty, maybe intelligence work with Chen's unit. You'd still be contributing, just from a safer position. Desk duty, Sarah repeated, the words tasting bitter. While Max recovers alone, while the people who did this to him walk around thinking they've won. Morrison stood, his expression sympathetic but firm. I know this isn't what you want to hear, but you almost died today, Sarah. Max almost died. We got lucky. Incredibly, impossibly lucky. Next time we might not be. After Morrison left, Sarah sat in silence with Max, listening to the steady beep of the heart monitor, the quiet hiss of the IV pump. Her phone buzzed. Text messages from fellow officers, checking in, offering support. She ignored them all except one from Lieutenant Hayes. Finished processing the scene. Whoever built that setup knew what they were doing. Military-level expertise. Found something else too. Call me when you can. Sarah dialed Hayes' number, keeping her voice low so as not to disturb Max. Collins, Hayes answered immediately. How's your K-9? Alive. Surgery went well, but it's going to be a long recovery. You said you found something. Yeah. After we cleared the explosives, we did a thorough search of the basement level. Found a second room hidden behind a false wall. It was set up as a surveillance center, multiple monitors, recording equipment, and a detailed file on you. Sarah felt her blood run cold. What kind of file? Everything. Your home address, your daily routes, your work schedule. Photos of you leaving your apartment, getting coffee, arriving at the station. They've been watching you for weeks, maybe months. There were also blueprints of the warehouse, detailed notes on the trap's construction, and, this is the kicker, photos of other APD K-9 officers. You weren't the only target, Sarah. They're planning to hit the entire K-9 unit. The room seemed to tilt around Sarah. Other officers, other dogs, all of them potentially walking into traps, just like the one she'd barely escaped. "Have you informed the K-9 unit commander?" Sarah asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Captain Rodriguez was briefed an hour ago. All K-9 units have been pulled from field work, pending a full threat assessment. Nobody's happy about it, but nobody wants to risk another incident like today." Sarah looked at Max's sleeping form. The entire K-9 unit sidelined because of the Vargas cartel's vendetta. It wasn't just about her anymore. It was about every handler and their partner who dedicated their lives to protecting Atlanta. "Lieutenant, I want in on the investigation. Whatever Chen's unit is doing, wherever this leads, I want to be part of taking these people down." Hayes was quiet for a moment. "You sure about that? From what Morrison tells me, the brass is thinking about pulling you back. Let them try. These people made it personal. They hurt my partner. They're threatening my colleagues. I'm not sitting on the sidelines while someone else finishes this." "I'll talk to Chen," Hayes said. "But Sarah, be careful. People who build traps like the one you survived don't give up easily. They're patient, methodical, and extremely dangerous. Watch your back." After ending the call, Sarah leaned back in her chair, her eyes never leaving Max. The dog's ears twitched slightly in his sleep, and she wondered what he was dreaming about. Running, probably. Chasing suspects. Doing the work he loved. "We're going to get through this," Sarah whispered to him. "Both of us. And then we're going to make sure nobody else has to go through what we did today." The door opened, and a woman in her late 40s entered. Captain Elena Rodriguez, commander of the K-9 unit. She was a legend in the department, having spent 25 years working with dogs before moving into administration. If anyone understood what Sarah was feeling, it was Rodriguez. "Officer Collins," Rodriguez said, her voice carrying the weight of command tempered with genuine concern. "How are you holding up?" "I've been better, Captain." Rodriguez pulled up a chair and sat down, her eyes on Max. "I heard what you did today, running out of that basement with Max while the bombs were still active. That was either the bravest or the stupidest thing I've ever heard of." "Probably both," Sarah admitted. "Probably," Rodriguez agreed, "but it's also exactly what I would expect from one of my officers. The bond between handler and K-9 isn't something civilians understand. These dogs aren't just tools or even pets. They're partners in the truest sense. They trust us with their lives, and we owe them the same." Sarah felt tears welling up again and blinked them away furiously. "Captain, Morrison says the brass is thinking about desk duty for me. I won't." Rodriguez held up a hand. "I know what Morrison said, and I've already spoken with the chief. Here's what's going to happen. You're on medical leave for the next week while Max is in the hospital. That's non-negotiable. You need time to process what happened, and frankly, you need to be here for Max's initial recovery. After that, we'll reassess." "Reassess for desk duty," Sarah said bitterly. "Reassess for options," Rodriguez corrected. "I've worked with Detective Chen before. He's good at what he does, and he specifically requested you for his investigation into the Vargas organization. If you want in on that, I can make it happen. But Sarah," Rodriguez's expression grew stern, "you need to understand what you'd be getting into. This isn't field work. It's intelligence gathering, surveillance, analysis. It's hours of tedious work punctuated by moments of insight. It's not chasing suspects with Max at your side. It's finding the people who hurt him," Sarah said quietly. "That's enough for me right now." Rodriguez studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, I'll clear it with the chief. But the deal is this. You take the week off, you check in with the department psychologist, standard protocol after a traumatic incident, and you stay away from any situation that might provoke the cartel. No solo investigations, no cowboy heroics. You work with Chen's team, you follow their protocols, and you keep me informed of any developments. Clear? Crystal clear, Captain." "Good." Rodriguez stood, then paused at the door. "Sarah, I've been doing this job for a long time, and I've seen a lot of handlers go through trauma. Some of them never recover. They lose their nerve, they lose their trust in their dogs, or they just burn out from the stress. Don't let that happen to you. You're one of the best handlers I've ever worked with, and the department needs you, not just for this investigation, but for the long haul." After Rodriguez left, Sarah found herself alone again with Max and her thoughts. The dog's breathing had deepened, his body relaxing into genuine sleep as the sedatives fully took hold. Sarah reached out and gently stroked his head, feeling the warmth of his fur, the steady rhythm of his pulse. Her phone buzzed again, this time a call from an unknown number. Sarah almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Officer Collins," a male voice, unfamiliar, with a slight accent. "I hope you're enjoying your time at the veterinary hospital. Your dog survived the trap." "That's unfortunate." Sarah's entire body went rigid. "Who is this?" A low chuckle. "Someone who appreciates good work. That trap was elegant, don't you think? Motion sensors, pressure plates, remote detonation capability. It should have worked. The fact that it didn't tells me you're either very good or very lucky. I'm betting on lucky." "If you're trying to scare me, I'm not trying to scare you, Officer Collins. I'm informing you. You cost the Vargas organization a great deal of money and caused significant operational disruption. That has consequences. Today was just the opening move. There will be others." Sarah glanced at the door, wondering if she could signal someone, trace the call somehow. But her training kicked in. Keep him talking, gather information. "Rafael Mendez is in custody," Sarah said. "Miguel Torres too. Your operation is blown. Operations can be rebuilt, personnel replaced. But reputation, Officer Collins, reputation is everything in our business. You made us look weak. You and that dog of yours, that cannot stand. So, what's your play? Another trap? Another ambush? You people aren't as smart as you think you are." "Oh, we're quite smart. Smart enough to know where you live, where you shop, where you get your morning coffee. Smart enough to know that you have a sister in Athens, Georgia. Rachel, isn't it? Elementary school teacher. 2 children." Sarah's blood turned to ice. "If you go anywhere near my family, then what? You'll arrest us. You'll stop us. You couldn't even stop a simple trap today. What makes you think you can protect everyone you care about?" "Because I have the entire Atlanta Police Department behind me," Sarah said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "And because, unlike you, I actually give a damn about innocent people. You want to come after me? Fine, but stay away from my family." "Family is leverage, Officer Collins. Surely you understand that. How can we make you suffer if we only target you? No, the real pain comes from watching those you love pay for your mistakes." "I'm recording this conversation," Sarah lied. "Every word is evidence that'll put you away for the rest of your life." Another chuckle. "No, you're not. This is a burner phone, untraceable, and I'll dispose of it as soon as we're done talking. But by all means, tell your colleagues about this call. Tell them about the threat. It won't change anything. We're patient, Officer Collins. We can wait weeks, months, even years if necessary. But eventually, you'll let your guard down. Everyone does. And when that happens, the line went dead." Sarah immediately dialed Captain Rodriguez, her hands shaking as she relayed the conversation. Within minutes, the veterinary hospital was crawling with police officers, and Sarah's sister was being picked up by Athens PD for protective custody. The threat had just escalated from personal to existential. Detective Chen arrived an hour later, looking grim. He was a compact man in his 40s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Sarah had worked with him briefly on a previous case and remembered him as thorough, intelligent, and utterly relentless when pursuing a target. "Officer Collins," Chen said, pulling up a chair, "Captain Rodriguez filled me in on the phone call. We're treating this as a credible threat against you and your family. I've already got teams working on tracing the call, though I suspect it's a dead end. These guys are professionals." "What about my sister?" "She and her kids are in protective custody in Athens. We're coordinating with local PD to keep them safe. But Sarah, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. The Vargas organization has deep resources and a long reach. Protecting you and your family long-term is going to require significant effort and some lifestyle changes on your part." I don't care about lifestyle changes, I care about stopping these people. Chen nodded approvingly. That's what I wanted to hear, because I need someone who understands how the Vargas organization thinks, how they operate, and who has personal motivation to see this through. Captain Rodriguez recommended you for my task force. Are you interested? Absolutely. Good. Here's what we know so far. The Vargas cartel has been operating in Atlanta for at least 5 years, maybe longer. They're primarily involved in weapons trafficking, though they've branched out into drugs and human trafficking as well. The warehouse where you found the trap was just one node in a much larger network. Mendez and Torres were running that operation, but they report to someone higher up the food chain. Chen pulled out his phone and showed Sarah a photo of a man in his 50s. Distinguished looking with silver hair and expensive clothing. This is Carlos Vargas himself. He runs the entire organization from somewhere in Mexico, but we believe he has multiple locations in the US where he conducts business. We've been after him for years, but he's like smoke, always one step ahead. You think Mendez will give him up? Doubtful. The Vargas organization is known for taking care of its people when they're arrested. Lawyers, money for families, promises of advancement when they get out. But they're also known for extreme violence against anyone who cooperates with law enforcement. Mendez and Torres know that if they talk, their families back in Mexico are dead, so they'll stay quiet, do their time, and come out as heroes. Then how do we get to Vargas? Chen smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. We do what the Vargas organization does best. We gather intelligence, we build a comprehensive picture of their operation, and we find the weak points. Then we exploit those weak points until the whole structure collapses. It takes time, patience, and a lot of tedious work. But it works. He handed Sarah a folder. This is everything we have on the Vargas organization's Atlanta operations. I need you to go through it. Familiarize yourself with the players, the locations, the methods. When you come back from your medical leave, you'll be working directly with my team. We'll coordinate surveillance, analyze communications, build cases, and eventually, we'll find a way to bring Carlos Vargas to justice. Sarah opened the folder and found herself looking at a web of connections, photos, addresses, phone records, financial transactions. It was overwhelming in its complexity, a criminal empire hiding in plain sight within her city. I'll find them, Sarah said quietly, looking at Max's sleeping form. For him, for every other K-9 that's at risk, for my family, I'll find them and I'll bring them down. Chen stood, preparing to leave. I believe you will, Officer Collins. But remember, these people play for keeps. They've already tried to kill you once. They'll try again. So when you're going through that file, when you're planning your next move, always ask yourself, what am I willing to sacrifice to get justice? After Chen left, Sarah sat with Max through the night, the folder open on her lap, her mind racing with possibilities and plans. The Vargas organization thought they could intimidate her, threaten her family, destroy everything she cared about. They thought fear would make her back down. They were wrong. Sarah Collins had walked into a basement full of explosives to save her partner. She'd defied every protocol, every reasonable precaution, every survival instinct, because that's what loyalty demanded. If the Vargas organization thought that kind of person would be scared off by threats, they fundamentally misunderstood who they were dealing with. She looked at Max, at his bandaged leg, at the IV lines keeping him alive, and felt her resolve harden into something unbreakable. They made a mistake, she whispered to her sleeping partner. They thought that trap would break us, but all they did was give us a reason to fight. And we're going to fight, Max. We're going to fight until every single one of them pays for what they did to you. Outside the window, Atlanta's lights glittered in the darkness, millions of people going about their lives, unaware of the criminal empire operating in their midst. But Sarah saw it now, saw the hidden web of violence and corruption that Chen's folder revealed, and she was going to tear it down, one thread at a time. The trap hadn't broken her. It had forged her into something stronger, and Carlos Vargas was about to learn that some prey, when cornered, becomes the predator. 3 weeks had passed since the warehouse incident, and Sarah had thrown herself into Detective Chen's investigation with single-minded intensity. The mandatory week off had felt like torture, sitting in therapists' offices talking about trauma while Max recovered in the hospital, checking in on her sister in Athens, who'd been relocated to a safe house, lying awake at night, replaying every moment of that basement room. But once she'd been cleared for duty, Sarah had become Chen's most dedicated team member. The intelligence unit's operations center was located in a nondescript office building in downtown Atlanta, far from the main police headquarters. Security was tight, access restricted, and the work was exactly as Chen had described: tedious, methodical, and occasionally illuminating. Sarah spent her days analyzing surveillance footage, tracing financial transactions, mapping connections between known Vargas associates. It wasn't the adrenaline rush of fieldwork with Max, but it was productive, and it was helping her build a case that would destroy the people who'd hurt her partner. Sarah was reviewing phone records when Chen appeared at her desk, his expression more animated than usual. "Collins, conference room, now. We've got something." The conference room was already crowded with task force members when Sarah arrived. Lieutenant Hayes was there, along with several detectives Sarah didn't recognize, and Captain Rodriguez, who nodded acknowledgement when Sarah entered. Chen moved to the front of the room, where a large screen displayed a street map of Atlanta. "All right, people, listen up," Chen began. "We've caught a break. One of Mendez's associates, a low-level courier named Jimmy Reyes, got picked up on an unrelated warrant yesterday. He's scared, looking to deal, and he's given us something significant. The Vargas organization is planning a major weapons transfer tomorrow night. Military-grade hardware coming up from Mexico, being distributed to multiple buyers across the southeast. This is big enough that Carlos Vargas himself is supposedly coming to Atlanta to oversee it personally." The room erupted in murmurs. Sarah felt her pulse quicken. Carlos Vargas on U.S. soil was unprecedented. The man was notoriously cautious, rarely leaving Mexico, and when he did travel, it was with extensive security. If Chen's information was accurate, this was the opportunity they'd been working toward. "Location?" Hayes asked. Chen clicked a button, and the map zoomed in on a section of the industrial district, uncomfortably close to the warehouse where Sarah and Max had nearly died. Another abandoned facility, this one an old shipping depot near the port. Reyes says the transfer is scheduled for midnight tomorrow. Vargas is coming in personally because one of the buyers is a major player, someone important enough that Vargas wants to build the relationship directly. "How reliable is Reyes?" Captain Rodriguez asked. "He's terrified," Chen replied. "When Mendez got arrested, word spread through the organization that anyone connected to that operation was potentially exposed. Reyes thinks he's next, and he's hoping that giving us Vargas will buy him protective custody and a reduced sentence. I believe him." "So what's the play?" Sarah asked, leaning forward. Chen looked directly at her. "Multi-agency tactical operation. FBI is already involved. This crosses state lines, so it's their jurisdiction too. We're coordinating with them, DEA and ATF. The plan is to surveil the location, confirm Vargas's presence, and move in to arrest everyone on site. We're talking dozens of arrests, millions in seized weapons, and the head of the Vargas organization in custody." "Sounds too good to be true," Hayes said skeptically. "It might be," Chen admitted, "which is why we're being extremely careful. No leaks, no communications except through secure channels, and we're keeping the team small until the last possible moment. Vargas has demonstrated that he has intelligence sources within law enforcement, maybe not in this room, but somewhere in the system. If he gets wind that we're coming, he'll disappear and we'll never get another chance like this." Sarah's mind was racing. "What about security? Vargas doesn't go anywhere without heavy protection. Reyes estimates at least 20 armed guards, possibly more. The facility itself is large, multiple buildings, lots of places for lookouts. We're going to need overwhelming force and perfect coordination. FBI's hostage rescue team is being brought in, along with our tactical units. This isn't a quick raid. This is a military-style operation. I want in, Sarah said immediately. Chen shook his head. Collins, you're intelligence, not tactical. Your role is here, coordinating information, supporting the operation from the TOC. With all due respect, Detective, I've earned the right to be there when Vargas goes down. He tried to kill me. He threatened my family. He's responsible for Max's injuries. I want to be there, and your emotional investment is exactly why you shouldn't be, Chen countered. This needs to be clean, professional, by the book. We can't afford any complications because someone has a personal vendetta. Captain Rodriguez intervened before Sarah could respond. Detective Chen is right, Officer Collins. Your place is in the Tactical Operations Center, not on the ground. You've done excellent work these past weeks, but this operation requires experienced tactical officers who can maintain emotional distance. Sarah wanted to argue, wanted to demand her place on the assault team, but she saw the determination in Rodriguez's eyes and knew it was pointless. Instead, she nodded stiffly. Understood, Captain. The briefing continued for another hour, covering entry points, communication protocols, contingency plans. Sarah absorbed every detail, committing the operation to memory, already thinking about how she could contribute from the TOC. If she couldn't be there for the arrest personally, she'd make damn sure she supported the team that would be. After the meeting, Sarah returned to her desk and pulled up everything they had on the shipping depot. The facility had been abandoned for nearly a decade, a victim of the economic downturn and shifting transportation patterns. Satellite imagery showed multiple buildings, a main warehouse, several smaller storage structures, and a large open yard filled with rusted shipping containers, perfect for a covert operation, with plenty of places to hide both weapons and personnel. Her phone buzzed, a text from Dr. Reeves. Max is ready for visitor. His spirits are improving. Thought you might want to know. Sarah glanced at the clock. It was already past 6 in the evening, and the operation wouldn't kick off until tomorrow night. She could afford a few hours away from the office. She grabbed her jacket and headed for the door, stopping by Chen's office on the way out. I'm going to check on Max, she told him. I'll be back in the morning to help with final preparations. Chen looked up from his computer, his expression softening slightly. How's he doing? Better. Dr. Reeves thinks he might be ready to come home in another week or so, though he'll still need months of physical therapy. That's good news. Sarah. Chen paused, choosing his words carefully. I know you wanted to be part of the tactical team tomorrow. I get it. But the best thing you can do for this operation is what you've been doing, providing solid intelligence that keeps everyone safe. That's valuable work, even if it doesn't feel as satisfying as kicking down doors. I know, Sarah said, and she meant it. I just want to see it through to the end. You will. When Vargas is in custody, when the weapons are seized, when we dismantle his entire organization, that'll be your victory too. You earned it. The drive to Piedmont Veterinary Emergency took 30 minutes through evening traffic. Sarah used the time to decompress, letting the tension of the day drain away. The facility's front desk recognized her immediately. She'd been there almost every day since Max's surgery and waved her through to the recovery wing. Max was in a larger room now, no longer in critical care. The heavy bandages had been reduced to a lighter wrap, and the IV lines were gone. When Sarah entered, Max's head came up immediately, his tail beginning to wag with such force that his entire back end moved with it. "Hey, boy," Sarah said, her voice catching with emotion. "Look at you. You're looking so much better." She sat on the floor next to his bed, and Max immediately tried to stand, eager to greet her properly. Sarah gently pressed him back down. "Easy, Max. Doctor's orders. No putting weight on that leg yet." Max settled, but kept his head in Sarah's lap, his dark eyes fixed on her face with such joy and trust that Sarah felt tears welling up. She'd been so focused on the investigation, on bringing down Vargas, that she'd almost forgotten what this was really about. This dog, this partner who'd given everything for her. "I miss you," Sarah whispered, stroking his ears. "Every day at the office, every time I hear a dog bark, I turn around expecting you to be there. The investigation is important, but you're more important. You know that, right?" Max responded by licking her hand, and Sarah laughed, despite her tears. "Doctor." Reeves appeared in the doorway, smiling at the reunion. "He's been waiting for you," Reeves said. "Every time the door opens, his ears perk up. He knows your footsteps." "How's his recovery progressing?" "Better than expected, honestly. The fracture is healing well, and the soft tissue damage is responding to treatment. We'll start gentle physical therapy next week, just basic range of motion exercises at first." "But Sarah," Reeves' expression grew more serious. "I need to be honest with you about his long-term prognosis." Sarah felt her stomach tighten. "What is it?" "The leg will heal, but Max will never have full strength or flexibility in it again. For a working K-9, that's a significant limitation. He might be able to return to some duties, detection work, maybe crowd control in low-stress situations. But pursuit, protection work, tactical operations, those are probably off the table." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. Max's entire purpose, his identity, was built around being a working dog. Taking that away from him would be like taking away a piece of his soul. "Isn't there anything we can do? Surgery, therapy, anything?" "We're doing everything medically possible," Reeves said gently. "Sometimes injuries just have permanent consequences. But Sarah, this doesn't mean Max's life is over. He can still have a good quality of life, can still be your companion, can still do modified work. He'll just be different from before." Sarah nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Max, sensing her distress, whined softly and pressed closer to her. She wrapped her arms around him, burying her face in his fur, and let herself grieve for the partnership they'd lost, the future they'd had planned, the simple joy of working together that had been stolen by the Vargas organization's trap. "I'm going to get them," Sarah whispered into Max's fur. "Tomorrow night, we're taking down Vargas. And when we do, it'll be justice for what they did to you, I promise." She stayed with Max for 2 more hours, just sitting with him, talking to him, letting him know he wasn't forgotten or abandoned. When she finally left, the dog watched her go with sad eyes, and Sarah had to force herself not to turn back. Tomorrow night was critical. She needed to focus. The next day passed in a blur of final preparations. The Tactical Operations Center was set up in a secure facility near the port. Multiple screens displaying satellite feeds, surveillance cameras, and tactical communications. Sarah arrived at 4 in the afternoon to help coordinate the intelligence side of the operation. By sunset, the command center was fully staffed. Chen coordinating overall strategy, FBI Special Agent Morrison handling tactical deployment, and Captain Rodriguez overseeing APD's involvement. At 10 p.m., the tactical teams began moving into position. Sarah watched on screens as armored vehicles rolled through darkened streets, as snipers took positions on nearby buildings, as FBI's hostage rescue team assembled in a staging area half a mile from the target. The operation was massive, over 100 law enforcement personnel involved in the largest operation targeting the Vargas organization in years. At 11:15, Reyes's information was confirmed. A convoy of 3 black SUVs approached the shipping depot, their headlights cutting through the darkness. Surveillance confirmed multiple individuals exiting the vehicles, several carrying what appeared to be weapons, and in the center vehicle, confirmed through facial recognition software, Carlos Vargas himself. "Target is on site," Chen announced. "All units, maintain positions. We wait for the weapons transfer to begin before we move in. We want evidence of the actual transaction." Sarah's hands gripped the edge of the console as she watched the screens. This was it. Months of investigation, weeks of planning, all coming down to the next hour. Vargas was finally within reach. At 11:40, another vehicle arrived, a large truck with Mexican plates. Sarah watched as Vargas's people began unloading crates from the truck, carrying them into the main warehouse building. This was the evidence they needed. "All units, prepare to execute," Special Agent Morrison commanded. "On my mark," Suddenly, one of the surveillance screens went dark, then another, then a third. "What's happening?" Chen demanded. A technician frantically worked his console. "Someone's jamming our feeds. All external cameras are going offline." Sarah's blood ran cold. "It's a trap. Vargas knows we're here." Before anyone could respond, gunfire erupted from multiple locations. On the few screens still functioning, Sarah saw muzzle flashes, tactical teams taking cover, chaos erupting across the operation zone. "All units, we are compromised! Repeat, operation is compromised!" Morrison shouted into his radio. "Execute arrest protocols immediately!" The TOC descended into controlled pandemonium. Radio chatter exploded with reports of contact, officers calling for backup, teams trying to coordinate in the face of unexpected resistance. Sarah watched helplessly as the carefully planned operation disintegrated into a firefight. "We have officers pinned down on the north side," someone reported. "Hostage rescue team is taking heavy fire from the warehouse. Suspects are attempting to flee in vehicles." Chen was on 3 radios simultaneously, trying to coordinate response, to regain control of a situation that had spiraled out of their grasp. Captain Rodriguez was directing APD units to establish perimeter positions. Special Agent Morrison was calling for additional tactical support. Sarah stared at the screens, at the flashing lights and smoke, at the tactical teams fighting for their lives, and felt rage building inside her. Vargas had known they were coming. Someone had tipped him off, given him time to prepare an ambush. The operation wasn't meant to arrest criminals. It was meant to slaughter police officers. "Detective Chen," Sarah said urgently, "I need to get out there." "Absolutely not," Chen replied without looking away from his screens. "This situation is already critical. We're not adding more personnel into an active firefight." If Vargas had advance warning, he might have prepared more than just an ambush. He might have set traps, devices like the one that caught Max. Our tactical teams could be walking into death traps right now. That got Chen's attention. He turned to look at her, understanding dawning in his eyes. "You think he's using his bomb maker again? I think if he knew we were coming, he'd prepare every possible advantage, and we know he has expertise in explosives. Our teams need to know what to look for." Chen grabbed a radio. "All units, this is command. Be advised, potential for explosive devices on site. Exercise extreme caution when entering structures or pursuing suspects. Bomb squad is being notified." But Sarah knew it wasn't enough. Bomb squad response time would be at least 20 minutes, and by then, officers could already be dead. She thought of Max, caught in a trap, waiting for help. She thought of her colleagues out there in the darkness, facing an enemy who fought without honor or restraint. She made a decision. Sarah grabbed her tactical vest from a locker, checked her service weapon, and headed for the door. Chen noticed and moved to intercept her. "Collins, stand down. That's an order. With respect, Detective, I'm the only person in this building who's actually survived one of Vargas's traps. I know what to look for. I can help. You can also get yourself killed. People are already dying out there," Sarah shot back. "Every second we debate is another second our officers are at risk. I'm going, sir. You can either support me or write me up later." Chen stared at her for a long moment, and Sarah saw the war between duty and pragmatism play out in his expression. Finally, he grabbed a radio and tossed it to her. "Stay on Channel 4. Report everything you see. And Collins," Chen's voice softened slightly, "don't do anything Max wouldn't want you to do." Sarah nodded and ran for the door. Outside, she found a patrol unit preparing to head to the scene and commandeered a ride. The drive took less than 5 minutes, but it felt like an eternity. As they approached the shipping depot, the sounds of gunfire became clear. Not the controlled bursts of training exercises, but the chaotic staccato of a real battle. The patrol unit dropped her at a command post established 3 blocks from the target. Lieutenant Hayes was there, coordinating tactical response, looking grim. "Collins, what the hell are you doing here?" "Looking for traps, Lieutenant. If Vargas knew we were coming..." "He did," Hayes confirmed darkly. "This whole thing was a setup. Reyes either fed us bad intel or Vargas turned him. Either way, we walked right into an ambush. Casualties? 3 officers wounded so far, none critical. But we've got teams pinned down, and Vargas's people are fighting like they've got nothing to lose. Hayes looked at Sarah, assessing. You think there are explosives in play? I'd bet my badge on it. Vargas doesn't leave anything to chance. If he prepared an ambush, he prepared backup measures too. Hayes made a decision. All right, Collins, you're with Alpha Team. They're preparing to breach the main warehouse where we believe Vargas is holed up. You provide overwatch for explosive threats, but you do not engage unless absolutely necessary. Clear? Clear. Alpha Team was assembled behind an armored vehicle. 8 tactical officers in full gear checking weapons and reviewing entry procedures. The team leader, Sergeant Mike Dawson, looked skeptical when Hayes introduced Sarah. No offense, Officer Collins, but we don't have time to babysit. She's not here to be babysat, Hayes interrupted. She's your explosive threat spotter. 3 weeks ago, she walked out of a room rigged with enough bombs to level a building. If anyone can spot Vargas's traps, it's her. Listen to what she says. Dawson reassessed Sarah with new eyes, then nodded. All right, you stay in the middle of our formation, behind the shield carriers. You see anything suspicious, wires, devices, pressure plates, you call it out immediately. We stop, we assess, we proceed carefully. Understood? Understood. The team moved out, advancing on the warehouse with practiced precision. Sarah's heart hammered as they crossed the open ground, expecting at any moment to hear the explosion that would end her life. But they reached the building's exterior wall without incident. Dawson signaled for a pause, while a breacher prepared the door charges. Sarah scanned the area with her flashlight, looking for anything out of place. There, near the doorframe, a thin wire barely visible in the darkness. "Wait!" Sarah hissed. "Wire, right side of the door, about waist height." The breacher stopped mid-motion and looked where Sarah indicated. "Damn! Good catch. That's connected to—" He followed the wire with his light. "Yeah, that's a claymore mine rigged as a booby trap. Anyone coming through that door would have been shredded." "Can you disarm it?" Dawson asked. "Give me 2 minutes." Those were the longest 2 minutes of Sarah's life. Behind them, gunfire continued to echo through the night. Inside the warehouse, they could hear shouts in Spanish, Vargas's people coordinating their defense. And all around them, darkness concealed unknown threats. The breacher finally nodded. "Clear. Proceeding with breach." Vroom. The door exploded inward with a sharp bang, and Alpha Team flooded through, moving with the fluid coordination of countless training exercises. Sarah followed, her eyes scanning constantly for threats beyond armed combatants. The warehouse interior was a maze of crates and containers, creating countless blind spots and ambush points. Vargas's people had prepared well. They had elevated positions, clear firing lanes, and no apparent intention of surrendering. Alpha Team engaged them systematically, trading fire, advancing when possible, the operation devolving into urban warfare at its most brutal. Sarah spotted another wire, this one running along the floor between 2 stacks of crates. "Left side, tripwire!" Alpha Team adjusted their approach, avoiding the trap. Sarah's light followed the wire to its source, another explosive device, this one designed to collapse the crate stack and crush anyone nearby. "How many of these things did he set?" Dawson muttered. "As many as he thought he'd need," Sarah replied grimly. They pushed deeper into the warehouse, clearing rooms, neutralizing threats, discovering and avoiding 3 more explosive traps that Sarah spotted before they could be triggered. The tactical team's initial skepticism had transformed into respect. Sarah's presence had already saved lives. A burst of Spanish echoed from somewhere ahead. Dawson signaled for the team to hold position. "That sounded like Vargas," one of the tactical officers whispered. "Second floor, northeast corner." The team moved toward a metal staircase leading to a catwalk system that provided access to the warehouse's upper levels. Sarah examined the stairs carefully, her flashlight revealing what she'd feared, pressure sensors on multiple steps. "The stairs are rigged," she reported. "At least 3 pressure sensors that I can see. There might be more." "Can we go round?" Dawson asked. Sarah scanned the area and spotted a loading lift system. hold, probably non-functional, but it might provide alternate access. Maybe. That lift might get us to the catwalk without using the stairs. 2 tactical officers examined the lift. It's manual, not electric. We can crank it up, but it'll be slow and exposed. Better than triggering a bomb, Dawson decided. Let's move. The lift creaked and groaned as they cranked it upward, every sound seeming impossibly loud in the chaos of the ongoing firefight. Sarah kept her eyes on the catwalk above, watching for threats, her service weapon drawn and ready. They reached the catwalk level and spread out, moving along the metal walkway with careful steps. Ahead, Sarah could see light coming from what appeared to be an office built into the corner of the warehouse, probably where Vargas had set up his command post. Voices were clearly audible now, Vargas and at least 2 others arguing in rapid Spanish about escape routes and whether they should fight or flee. Alpha Team positioned themselves outside the office, preparing for final entry. That's when Sarah saw it. A camera mounted above the office door, its red LED light blinking. She'd seen that same setup before, in another basement, in another trap. "Wait!" Sarah shouted. "The door is—" The explosion was deafening. The shaped charge mounted above the office door detonated, sending a wave of force and shrapnel down the catwalk. Sarah felt herself thrown backward, her body hitting the metal railing hard enough to drive the air from her lungs. Through ringing ears, she heard screaming, heard the groan of stressed metal, felt the entire catwalk structure beginning to collapse. Hands grabbed her. Dawson, his face mask cracked but his eyes alert. He was shouting something Sarah couldn't hear. The world was spinning, tilting, falling. The catwalk gave way completely, and Sarah felt herself plunging through darkness toward the concrete floor 30 feet below. She hit something, a crate, a container, something that broke her fall but not her momentum. Pain exploded through her left side, white-hot and all-consuming. She tried to move, tried to breathe, and found both impossibly difficult. Through blurred vision, Sarah saw a figure emerge from the smoke and chaos, a well-dressed man in his 50s, silver hair, expensive suit now torn and dirty. Carlos Vargas, and in his hand a pistol aimed directly at her head. "You!" Vargas said in accented English, his voice filled with rage. "You destroyed my operation, killed my people. You should have died in that first trap. I should have killed you myself." Sarah tried to reach for her weapon, but her right arm wouldn't respond. She could only stare up at Vargas, at death itself, and think about Max, recovering in a hospital, waiting for her to come home. "Any last words, Officer Collins?" Vargas asked, his finger tightening on the trigger. Sarah found her voice, found the strength to speak despite the pain. "Yeah, you should have used more explosives." Vargas's expression twisted in confusion for just a moment, and in that moment, a single gunshot rang out. Vargas jerked, stumbled backward, and collapsed. Behind him, Lieutenant Hayes lowered his sniper rifle, smoke curling from its barrel. "Officer down!" Hayes's voice echoed through the warehouse. "Get medical in here now!" Sarah's vision was fading, the pain becoming distant, abstract. She thought she heard Max barking, but that was impossible. Max was safe. Max was recovering. Max was... Everything went dark. When Sarah woke, she was in a hospital bed, daylight streaming through windows, her left side wrapped in bandages that pulled tight with every breath. Standing beside her bed was Captain Rodriguez, and sitting in a chair by the window was Detective Chen. "Welcome back, Officer Collins," Rodriguez said, genuine relief in her voice. "You've been out for 18 hours. How do you feel?" "Like I fell off a catwalk," Sarah managed, her voice hoarse. "Vargas?" "Dead," Chen said simply. "Lieutenant Hayes's shot killed him instantly. We also arrested 23 of his associates and seized enough weapons to supply a small army. The Vargas organization's Atlanta operation is finished. Casualties? 5 officers wounded, including you. But thanks to you spotting those traps, nobody died. Alpha Team's report credits you with saving multiple lives. You're a hero, Collins." Sarah shook her head slightly, wincing at the pain. "I'm not a hero. I just did what needed to be done. How's Max?" Rodriguez smiled. "Dr. Reeves says Max has been driving everyone crazy. agitated ever since you were admitted. He knows something's wrong. We're arranging to bring him to visit you later today, once you're more stable." Tears welled in Sarah's eyes, not from pain, but from relief. It was over. Vargas was dead, his organization dismantled, the threat neutralized. Max was safe, her family was safe. They'd won. "There's something else you should know," Chen said, leaning forward. "Jimmy Reyes, the informant who gave us the intel, he was killed in his cell last night. Someone got to him before he could testify, which means the Vargas organization might be finished in Atlanta, but the larger network is still out there. This isn't completely over." Sarah closed her eyes, processing that information. Of course it wasn't over. Criminal organizations didn't disappear overnight. There would be more investigations, more operations, more battles to fight. But for now, in this moment, she'd done what she set out to do. She'd gotten justice for Max, protected her family, and helped bring down one of Atlanta's most dangerous criminal enterprises. "Detective Chen," Sarah said quietly, "when I'm recovered, I want back on your task force. If there are more pieces of the Vargas network out there, I want to help find them." Chen smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that." "Rest up, Collins. We've got a lot of work ahead of us." As Rodriguez and Chen left, Sarah lay back in her hospital bed and stared at the ceiling. Her body ached, her future was uncertain, and Max's recovery was still ongoing. But they'd survived. Against impossible odds, against a ruthless enemy, against traps designed to kill them, they'd survived. And that was enough. For now, that was enough. 6 months later, Sarah stood in the training yard of the Atlanta Police Department's K-9 facility, watching Max navigate an obstacle course with determined concentration. His left hind leg still showed a slight limp, probably always would, but the Belgian Malinois moved with surprising agility considering the severity of his injuries. Dr. Reeves had been right. Max would never be the same dog he was before the trap, but he was still Max, still driven, still eager to work. "Good, Max, over," Sarah called, gesturing toward a low wall. Max gathered himself and jumped, clearing the obstacle with inches to spare. His landing was slightly awkward, favoring his injured leg, but he recovered quickly and trotted back to Sarah, tail wagging, eyes bright with the joy of doing what he loved. Sarah knelt and wrapped her arms around him, feeling the solid warmth of his body, the steady beat of his heart. 6 months ago, she'd thought she might never hold him again. 6 months ago, they'd both been broken, physically, emotionally, spiritually, but they'd healed slowly and painfully and emerged different, but not defeated. "That's looking much better," Captain Rodriguez said, approaching from the training facility. "His range of motion has improved significantly." "He's worked hard," Sarah replied, standing and brushing dirt from her knees. "We both have." Rodriguez nodded, her expression thoughtful. "I've been reviewing your medical clearances and Max's veterinary evaluations. Dr. Reeves has certified him fit for limited duty, detection work, crowd control, public demonstrations. But Sarah, you need to understand that Max will never be cleared for high-risk tactical operations again. The liability is too great." Sarah had known this conversation was coming. She'd prepared herself for it over months of physical therapy and psychological counseling, through countless hours watching Max struggle to relearn basic movements, through the gradual acceptance that their partnership would never return to what it had been. "I understand, Captain, but we can still work together, right? Even if it's not chasing suspects through abandoned buildings." "Absolutely. In fact, I have a proposal for you." Rodriguez pulled an envelope from her jacket. "The department is creating a new community outreach program focused on K-9 education and public safety. We need an experienced handler to lead it, someone who understands both the capabilities and limitations of working dogs, someone who can connect with the public, someone who has a compelling story about the bond between officer and K-9. Sarah took the envelope and found herself looking at a formal job description, Community K-9 Coordinator. It was a promotion in rank and pay, but more importantly, it was a role that would keep her working with Max, would allow them to continue their partnership in a new form. This would mean no more field work, Rodriguez continued. You'd be doing school visits, community events, training demonstrations. You'd help develop curriculum for youth programs, coordinate with other K-9 units across the state, maybe even work with Detective Chen's unit on educational initiatives about drug and weapons awareness. Sarah looked at Max, who was sitting patiently at her feet, watching her with those intelligent dark eyes. He didn't care about job titles or career paths. He just wanted to be with her, to work with her, to continue the partnership that had defined both their lives. "When would I start?" Sarah asked. Rodriguez smiled. "Whenever you're ready. Your medical leave officially ends next week, so you could start then. Or you could take more time if you need it. There's no rush." "Next week is good," Sarah decided. "Max and I are ready to get back to work. Maybe not the work we used to do, but work that matters." After Rodriguez left, Sarah spent another hour running Max through exercises, gradually rebuilding his strength and confidence. The physical scars had healed, but the psychological impact of the trauma took longer to address. Max had developed a wariness around enclosed spaces, a hesitancy when encountering mechanical noises. Dr. Reeves said it was a form of K-9 PTSD, treatable with patient exposure therapy and positive reinforcement. Sarah understood completely. She had her own version, nightmares about basements and red LED lights, a hypervigilance that made her check every room for hidden wires, a racing heart whenever her phone rang from an unknown number. The department psychologist said she was making good progress, but Sarah knew it would be years before she felt truly safe again. Her phone buzzed. A text from Detective Chen. "Can you stop by the office? Have something to show you." Sarah loaded Max into her personal vehicle, a SUV she'd purchased specifically to accommodate his needs, and drove to the intelligence unit's operations center. Chen met her at the door, looking more relaxed than Sarah had seen him in months. "Collins and Max, good to see you both." Chen reached down to scratch Max's ears, and the dog accepted the attention with dignified pleasure. "Come on back. I want to show you something." The operations center had expanded since Sarah's last visit. More personnel, more screens, more evidence of ongoing investigations. Chen led her to a conference room where a large display showed a complex web of connections, names, photos, locations, financial transactions. "This is what we've built since the Vargas takedown," Chen explained. "When Carlos Vargas died, his organization didn't disappear. It fractured. Different factions fighting for control, trying to maintain operations while dealing with our ongoing investigations. But here's the interesting part." Chen highlighted several nodes on the web. "We've identified and arrested 17 high-level operators in the past 6 months. We've seized over $50 million in assets. We've dismantled 3 major distribution networks. And it's all because of the intelligence foundation you helped establish." Sarah studied the display, recognizing names and faces from her weeks working on the task force. "You're winning." "We're making progress," Chen corrected. "There's still work to do, there always is, but the Vargas organization that nearly killed you and Max, that organization is finished. What remains are smaller, less coordinated groups that we can handle with conventional law enforcement methods." He turned to face Sarah directly. "I wanted you to see this, because you earned it. You didn't just survive Vargas's trap, you helped destroy his entire operation. Every arrest on this board, every seizure, every victory, you played a part in making it happen. You should be proud." Sarah felt Max lean against her leg, his solid presence grounding her. "I just did my job. You did more than your job. You put yourself in danger repeatedly, ignored orders when necessary, and showed courage that most people can't even imagine. And you did it all while recovering from trauma and worrying about your partner's health. That's not just doing your job, that's being exceptional. Detective Chen, I appreciate the recognition, but I'm moving on now. Captain Rodriguez offered me the Community K-9 coordinator position. I accepted. Max and I are starting a new chapter." Chen nodded approvingly. "Good, you've earned some peace. But Sarah, If you ever want to consult on investigations, if you ever want to provide training on explosive threats, if you ever just want to stop by and remind us why we do this work, my door is always open. You're part of this team forever. After leaving Chen's office, Sarah drove to a park near her apartment, one of Max's favorite places for off-duty recreation. She let him out of the vehicle and watched as he explored the open grass, moving with that distinctive limp, but otherwise showing all the enthusiasm of a much younger dog. Other park visitors noticed him, recognized the K-9 harness he still wore, and several approached to ask about him. Sarah found herself telling Max's story, simplified, sanitized, but fundamentally true. A police dog injured in the line of duty, recovering through determination and excellent medical care, preparing to return to work in a new capacity. People were moved by the story, wanted to pet Max, wanted to thank Sarah for her service. It was overwhelming and humbling in equal measure. One person who approached was a young woman, maybe 25, with a small child in tow. "Excuse me, officer. My son wants to meet your dog. Is that okay?" "Of course." Sarah knelt beside Max, positioning him for the interaction. "Max, this is a friend. Gentle." The boy, maybe 6 years old, reached out tentatively and touched Max's head. The dog remained perfectly still, his training overriding any impulse to move away. The boy's face lit up with joy. "He's so soft. Is he a police dog?" "He is," Sarah confirmed. "His name is Max, and he helps keep people safe." Did he catch bad guys?" Sarah glanced at Max, at the scars hidden beneath his fur, at the leg that would never fully heal. "He did. He was very brave, and he got hurt protecting people. But he's getting better now, and soon he'll be helping in a different way, teaching kids like you about safety and responsibility." The boy's mother smiled gratefully. "We've been talking about getting a dog, but I wasn't sure if he was ready for the responsibility." Seeing Max, hearing about what he does, I think it's helping him understand that dogs aren't just pets. They're family members who need care and respect. After the family left, Sarah sat on a bench and watched Max explore. This was the future Rodriguez had offered her. Not the adrenaline rush of tactical operations, not the danger and glory of field work, but something quieter and potentially more meaningful. Teaching children about responsibility, showing communities the value of K-9 partnerships, honoring the sacrifice that working dogs made every day. It wasn't what she'd imagined 6 months ago, lying in that basement room, promising Max they'd both survive. But maybe it was better. Maybe this was what they'd both been working toward all along, not just survival, but purpose beyond the immediate crisis. Her phone rang, an actual call this time from a number she recognized. Her sister, Rachel. "Sarah, how are you? How's Max?" "We're good, Rach, really good. Max just charmed a 6-year-old boy and might have convinced a family to adopt a dog. I'd call that a successful afternoon." "That's wonderful. Listen, I know you've been dealing with a lot, but the kids keep asking when Aunt Sarah and Max are coming to visit. Are you feeling up to a trip to Athens, maybe this weekend?" Sarah looked at Max, who had found a stick and was attempting to pick it up, despite its awkward length. "Yeah, actually, this weekend would be perfect. Max could use some time with his favorite small humans, and I could use some quality time with my sister." "Fantastic. The kids are going to be so excited. They've been following your recovery like it's a superhero origin story." After ending the call, Sarah whistled for Max, who abandoned his stick and trotted over immediately. She examined his gait, noting the improvement in his stride, the confidence in his movements. 6 months ago, Dr. Reeves hadn't been sure if Max would ever walk normally again. Now, he was running, jumping, and radiating health despite his permanent limitations. "You know what, Max?" Sarah said, scratching behind his ears. "We're going to be okay. Different than before, but okay. Maybe even better than okay." The following week, Sarah officially started her new position. Her first assignment was visiting an elementary school in East Atlanta, one of the department's community outreach priorities. Sarah and Max arrived to find 300 excited children assembled in the gymnasium, their faces lit with anticipation. Captain Rodriguez had come along to introduce them. "Boys and girls, I want you to meet Officer Sarah Collins and her partner Max. They're going to teach you about police K-9 units and show you some of the amazing things that working dogs can do." Sarah stepped forward with Max at her side, suddenly nervous in a way she'd never been during tactical operations. Facing down criminals was one thing. Facing down 300 curious children was entirely different. But then Max looked up at her, his dark eyes full of trust and encouragement, and Sarah felt her confidence return. "Good morning, everyone. Can you tell me what makes dogs special?" Hands shot up across the gymnasium. Sarah called on a girl in the front row. "They're loyal," the girl said. "That's right. What else?" "They're brave," a boy shouted. "They can smell really good," another child called out. "All correct," Sarah confirmed. "Dogs have amazing abilities. They can smell things we can't detect, hear sounds we can't hear, and run faster than most humans. But the most important thing about police dogs isn't their abilities, it's their relationship with their handlers. Max and I are partners. We trust each other completely, and that trust was tested in a very difficult situation a few months ago." Sarah had prepared a simplified version of their story, age-appropriate but honest, about danger and courage. She talked about how Max had been injured, how doctors had worked hard to heal him, how he'd shown incredible determination during recovery. The children listened with rapt attention, their young faces processing the reality that police work involved real danger and real consequences. "Now Max can't do all the things he used to do," Sarah continued. "His leg was hurt badly, and even though it's much better now, it will never be exactly the same as before. But that doesn't mean he's not valuable. It doesn't mean he's not still a police dog. It just means his job has changed. Instead of chasing suspects, now he teaches kids like you about safety and responsibility. And that's important work too." She spent the next hour demonstrating Max's abilities, his detection skills, his obedience training, his gentle interactions with children. Max performed flawlessly, seeming to understand the importance of what they were doing. When a shy boy asked if Max ever got scared, Sarah knelt beside her partner and answered honestly, "Max gets scared sometimes, just like you and me. Being brave doesn't mean never feeling afraid. It means doing what needs to be done even when you're scared." Max was very scared when he was hurt, but he trusted me to help him, and I was scared too, but I trusted Max to be brave. "That's what partnership means." The boy reached out and touched Max's head gently. "He's a good dog. He's the best dog," Sarah agreed, feeling tears prick her eyes. "He's my partner and my friend." After the school visit, Sarah and Max returned to the K-9 facility for a debriefing with Captain Rodriguez. Sarah expected a routine evaluation, but Rodriguez had someone else waiting in her office, Lieutenant Hayes from the bomb squad. "Lieutenant," Sarah said, surprised. "What brings you here?" Hayes stood and shook her hand warmly. "I wanted to give you this in person." He held out a small box. "Open it." Inside was a medal, the APD Medal of Valor, one of the highest honors the department could bestow. Sarah stared at it, speechless. "For extraordinary courage under fire," Hayes explained. "During the Vargas operation, you repeatedly put yourself in danger to protect other officers. You identified multiple explosive devices that would have caused mass casualties. And when the situation deteriorated, you maintained your composure and your effectiveness despite being injured yourself. The chief specifically requested that I present this to you personally, given my involvement in the operation. Lieutenant, I don't know what to say. I was just—" "Don't say you were just doing your job," Hayes interrupted. "What you did went far beyond duty. You showed the kind of courage that defines what it means to be a police officer. And frankly, after what you survived in that first basement, the fact that you were willing to go back into a dangerous situation at all shows a level of bravery that most people simply don't possess." Rodriguez stepped forward. "There's also this." She handed Sarah another box, slightly larger. "This is for Max. Inside was a custom K-9 badge engraved with Max's name and service record, along with a notation, "Injured in the line of duty, exemplary service." It was a formal recognition of Max's sacrifice and continued dedication. Sarah knelt beside Max and showed him the badge. "Look, boy, this is for you. You earned this." Max sniffed the badge politely, more interested in Sarah's emotional state than the piece of metal. He leaned against her, offering comfort in the way only dogs can, and Sarah wrapped her arms around him, letting herself feel the weight of everything they'd been through. "I'm proud of you both," Rodriguez said quietly. "You've taken a tragedy and transformed it into something positive. That school visit today, those children will remember Max for the rest of their lives. You're creating the next generation of people who understand the value of K-9 units, who respect working dogs, who see the bond between handler and partner as something worth protecting. That's legacy work, Sarah. That's making a real difference." The weeks that followed established a new rhythm for Sarah and Max. School visits became regular occurrences, each one refining their presentation, strengthening their message. They visited community centers, senior living facilities, youth programs. They worked with Detective Chen's unit on educational initiatives about drug awareness, showing how K-9 detection worked without glorifying the danger involved. Max thrived in his new role. The constant interaction with people seemed to heal something in him that medical treatment alone couldn't reach. His confidence grew, his wariness around new situations diminished, and while he would always carry the physical scars of his injury, the psychological wounds were gradually closing. Sarah's own healing progressed similarly. The nightmares became less frequent. The hypervigilance gradually decreased to manageable levels. She learned to accept that she would never be exactly who she was before the warehouse incident, but that wasn't necessarily a bad thing. She'd been forged by trauma into something stronger, more empathetic, more aware of both the fragility and resilience of life. 3 months into her new position, Sarah received a call from an unexpected source, a victims advocacy group that worked with families affected by violent crime. They wanted Sarah to speak at a fundraiser about resilience and recovery, to share her story in a way that might help others dealing with trauma. Sarah almost declined. Public speaking to children was one thing. Bearing her soul to adults who'd experienced their own tragedies was entirely different. But then she thought about the phone call from Vargas, the threats against her family, the terror of thinking she might lose Max. She thought about all the people who'd supported her recovery: Dr. Reeves, Captain Rodriguez, Detective Chen, Lieutenant Hayes, her fellow officers. She'd received so much help. Maybe it was time to give some back. The fundraiser was held at a downtown hotel, a formal affair with hundreds of attendees. Sarah wore her dress uniform with the Medal of Valor prominently displayed. Max, groomed to perfection and wearing his new badge on his service harness, accompanied her. They'd both come so far from that basement room, but standing on stage, looking out at the audience, Sarah felt the weight of memory pressing down. 6 months ago, Sarah began, her voice steady despite her nerves, my partner and I walked into what should have been a routine call. Instead, we walked into a nightmare. Max, she gestured to the Belgian Malinois sitting perfectly still beside her, was caught in a trap designed to kill. I was trapped with him, surrounded by explosives, facing the very real possibility that we would both die in that basement. The room was absolutely silent, every person focused on her words. I made Max a promise that day. I promised him we'd both survive. I promised that somehow, some way, we'd make it through. And we did, barely. But survival came with costs. Max's leg was shattered. He had to relearn basic movements, had to overcome pain and fear, had to accept that his life would never be the same as it was before. And I went through my own version of that journey: physical injuries, psychological trauma, and the slow realization that the person I was before no longer existed. Sarah paused, collecting her thoughts, feeling Max's presence beside her like an anchor. But here's what I learned through that process. Resilience isn't about bouncing back to who you were before. It's about moving forward to become who you need to be next. Max isn't the same dog he was 6 months ago. He's slower, more cautious, physically limited in ways that ended his tactical career, but he's also more patient, more connected to the people he works with, and honestly, he's teaching more people about courage and determination now than he ever did chasing criminals through abandoned buildings. A ripple of appreciative laughter moved through the audience. The same is true for me. I'm not the same officer I was before. I have scars, some visible, some not. I have limitations I didn't have before, but I also have perspective I didn't have before. I understand trauma in a way that only experience can teach. I can look into the eyes of someone who's suffering and say, I know how you feel, and mean it completely. That's valuable, that's worth something. Sarah looked down at Max, who gazed back with absolute trust. The bond between a handler and their K-9 is hard to explain to people who haven't experienced it. These dogs trust us with their lives. They follow us into danger without hesitation because they believe in us completely. And when that trust is tested, when crisis comes and everything is on the line, that bond is what saves us. Max saved me just as much as I saved him. We survived because we refused to give up on each other. She addressed the audience directly now, making eye contact with people in the front rows. If you're here tonight because you've experienced trauma, because you've lost someone, because you're struggling to make sense of violence or tragedy, I want you to know that healing is possible. It won't be fast, it won't be easy, and you won't end up exactly where you started. But you can build a new life from the pieces of the old one. You can find purpose in pain. You can transform survival into something meaningful. The speech continued for another 15 minutes, Sarah sharing specific strategies that had helped her recovery, resources that had proven valuable, and honest acknowledgement of the ongoing nature of healing. When she finished, the applause was thunderous, and more than a few people in the audience were wiping away tears. Afterward, dozens of people approached to thank her, to share their own stories, to ask about resources, or just to pet Max and draw comfort from his calm presence. Sarah found herself emotionally exhausted, but deeply fulfilled. This was the work she was meant to do now, not chasing criminals, but helping heal wounds, offering hope to those who felt hopeless. As the evening wound down, Sarah and Max stepped outside for fresh air. The Atlanta skyline glittered in the darkness, millions of lights representing millions of lives, each with their own struggles and triumphs. Sarah thought about the journey that had brought her here, the trap, the recovery, the investigation, the final confrontation with Vargas. It had been brutal and terrifying, but it had also revealed reserves of strength she hadn't known she possessed. Her phone buzzed, a text from Captain Rodriguez. Saw video of your speech. You're doing exactly what you were meant to do. Proud of you. Sarah smiled and pocketed her phone. She knelt beside Max and looked into his intelligent eyes. What do you think, boy? Did we do okay? Max responded by licking her face, his tail wagging, his entire body radiating contentment. For a dog who'd been through hell, who'd faced death and come back changed, he seemed remarkably at peace with where life had taken him. Maybe that was the lesson, Sarah thought. Not to fight against change, but to embrace it. Not to mourn what was lost, but to build something new from what remained. Max had done it. He'd transformed from a tactical K-9 into an ambassador and teacher without losing his essential nature. She could do the same. 6 months ago, Sarah had made Max a promise in a basement full of explosives. She'd promised they'd both survive. They'd kept that promise, but they'd done more than just survive. They'd healed. They'd grown. They'd found new purpose. And looking at Max now, healthy, happy, still her partner in every way that mattered, Sarah realized that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. 2 years later. Sarah stood before a graduating class of K-9 handlers, Max at her side as always. The dog was 8 years old now, moving a bit slower, his limp more pronounced when he was tired, but his eyes were still bright, his spirit still strong. The bond between handler and K-9 is the foundation of everything you'll do. Sarah told the graduates. That bond will be tested, maybe not as dramatically as mine was with Max, but tested nonetheless. There will be difficult calls, dangerous situations, moments when you're scared and exhausted and wondering if you made the right career choice. In those moments, look at your partner. Remember that they trust you completely, and let that trust give you strength. After the ceremony, a young handler approached, a woman Sarah's age, partnered with an energetic German shepherd. "Officer Collins, I just wanted to say thank you. I've been following your story since the academy, and honestly, you're the reason I wanted to work K-9. The way you and Max came through that situation, the way you adapted and found new ways to serve, that's inspiring." Sarah felt a familiar lump in her throat. "What's your name?" "Jessica Martinez. This is Thor." The German shepherd sat obediently, watching Sarah with alert interest. "Thor's a good name for a good dog. Jessica, the most important thing I can tell you is this. Take care of your partner, not just physically. Make sure he's emotionally healthy, mentally stimulated, that he knows he's valued beyond his work performance. Because these dogs give us everything. The least we can do is give them the same in return." "I will," Jessica promised. "And Officer Collins, if it's okay, I'd like to stay in touch. Maybe Thor and I could assist with some of your community programs? I'd like that very much." As Sarah and Max left the training facility, she felt a profound sense of peace. This was her life now, teaching, mentoring, supporting the next generation of K-9 handlers. It wasn't what she'd planned, but it was exactly what she needed. They drove home through Atlanta's evening traffic, Max dozing in the passenger seat, occasionally opening one eye to check on Sarah before drifting back to sleep. At home, Sarah prepared Max's dinner, a carefully balanced diet designed to maintain his health despite his reduced activity level, and her own simple meal. They ate together in comfortable silence, the companionship of years requiring no words. That night, Sarah sat in her living room reviewing materials for next week's school visits. Max lay at her feet, his breathing deep and even, occasionally twitching in his sleep. Sarah wondered what he dreamed about. Running, probably, his legs moving as he chased imaginary suspects through imaginary buildings. In his dreams, he could still do everything he used to do. In his dreams, he was whole. But even broken, even changed, Max was still the best partner Sarah could imagine. They'd survived together, healed together, and built a new life together. The trap that was meant to destroy them had instead revealed the depth of their bond, a connection that transcended physical abilities or career paths. Sarah reached down and gently scratched Max's ears. The dog stirred, opened his eyes, and looked at her with such pure love that Sarah felt tears welling up. "I love you too, boy," she whispered. "Forever." Max's tail thumped twice against the floor, his way of saying the same thing back. Outside, Atlanta continued its endless rhythm, millions of lives intersecting in countless ways. Somewhere out there, officers were responding to calls. K-9 units were tracking suspects. Criminals were planning their next moves. The work continued, as it always would. But here, in this moment, Sarah Collins and her partner Max had found something that no trap could take away, no injury could diminish, no threat could destroy. They'd found peace. And in the end, that was worth more than any medal, any commendation, any recognition. The bond between handler and dog, tested by fire, proven by survival, strengthened by love, was truly unbreakable. And it always would be. The end.